Solace and sadness. No. I think I usually keep things to myself a lot of times. I think, whatever I'm going through, I think it's easier for me to process that way, but also it's a way to avoid things. A lot of times I just don't talk about it just to avoid it. I think that's probably how I deal with pain and sadness a lot of times. Let's see. It's in the purse. I feel guilty sometimes for not calling my grandparents, but I also feel more guilty when I speak to them because my grandpa can't speak anymore due to his stroke, and he cries every time I call him. So I feel really guilty for not being able to be there a lot of times, and in order to can't really handle things like that for me, so I just choose to avoid it completely. I do miss him though. I do call him sometimes, but not as often as I should be.
I have to acknowledge and forgive myself of my own flaws, even the ones that have no relevance to the situation, to help my conscience regarding issues with them. She and I were in just two different places. He died a different person than the kid I knew. It's not who he was in years. But how do you just tell your heart to stop loving someone? How do you tell yourself that you can still love them, but not in the way you're used to? You can't pour love into them because things have changed. They're no longer there. Knowing bitterness won't help, but it's what I'm working through. I can't change the way any of our relationships were in the past. I have to know that sadness and bitterness were the environment that shaped him. But what about her? There wasn't any bitterness. There isn't any bitterness. But love for the people themselves and their painful decisions help make me into who I am at this moment. There is, and always will be, a lot of love and sadness for each person, but angst for their actions.
Do I recognize the beauty of pain? Unequivocally, yes, absolutely. I think there's just so much concentrated in moments of pain. So much just, I don't know, I think beauty is concentration.
The first time I realized that my family wasn't perfect was when my father gave me a check for $100 at Christmas that I could never cash.
I don't really have a lot of first-hand experience with death, or at least with tragic death. A bunch of my old relatives died when I was young, but never lost like a peer or a friend or anyone in a tragic way. So I sort of see from afar when it happens to friends of friends, or kind of secondhand. And I feel like I'm not in a place to console them or speak to them. So I don't know what it's like. It's weird. It's like it's not fear of missing out, obviously, but there is a lack of experience that I'm sort of maybe just respectful of people that have had to deal with a lot of heavy shit that I feel like I haven't. I'm not looking forward to it. It's more just like a curiosity. Like, what will that be like when someone who's actually close to me and my peer that dies, and I never get to see them again. I no doubt I will find out soon, unless I die, before then. But not that it's worse.
When was the first moment you realized your family wasn't perfect? Can't recall. I think I always knew they weren't perfect. I was ashamed of them ever since I was a child. Because they were different, because they would fight all the time.
I don't really have any stories to tell. Not anything that anyone else wouldn't know. But I think it's precisely that, my inability to do so, which has been my biggest source of reflection. The 2 times this family has come together to mourn, we've been subjected to shocking deaths. But with Poppy, we saw this coming, which allowed us time to process the reality of it all. It doesn't make it easier. In fact, in some ways, it makes it harder. As soon as I realized things weren't going to get better, I wondered, what do you say to someone who you know is going to die? I tried to make the best of each subsequent visit, and even asked Poppy a question I'd wondered since Nani's funeral. But mainly, I reflected on my relationship with him. I've had a really hard time figuring out what I wanted to say today. And then I came across these words. The only real apology is corrected behavior.
Surprisingly, I don't. It's surprising because it's something that I gravitate towards a lot, something that I find weird comfort in, but there's no solace in it. I would say the reason that I'm drawn to it, the reason that I find comfort in it is because I think sadness is honest, and I like things, people, memories, everything that do not lie. So I appreciate sadness, but the answer to this question would be no.
My relationship with Poppy was complex. To be honest, I wish it was deeper. But he showed me a valuable lesson early on in life that I'll always carry with me. My senior year in high school, Poppy sat the four of us down for lunch and told us he realized he hadn't been as good to us as he could have been. He recognized his faults in our relationship and wanted to correct that. I think that takes a lot to do something like that, to not only recognize your wrongdoings, and I'm not just talking about a mistake or a thing. He was talking broadly, speaking about a number of years, so to say, I have done wrong, and I don't want to continue in this way, because I want to have a better relationship with my daughter, and her husband, and my grandchildren. That speaks to his character in a way I wish to emulate in my life. I knew that was special then, but its ramifications didn't come into play until now. I was particularly sensitive to it, because it was coming at a time when I was going off to college and wouldn't be around to experience it. But our ability to see him, as well as the quality of which we got to see him, really changed. And now at the end of that life, I'm truly able to appreciate that change.
When was the first time you realized your family wasn't perfect? Recently. A lot of things that I knew or thought were not real or happened.
We all make choices in life, and I'll never forget Poppy's choice to change things, because it changed my relationship with him. He attempted to make right what was wrong, and I will always respect him for that. More recently, I had a moment with him. We were all there. We were waiting for the oxygen tanks to arrive one night. He was going to send us out so he could shower, so he could do it alone. I could hear the panic in his voice. We all could. So I said we would stay, because we were waiting anyway, like we all agreed upon, for the oxygen, and that he needn't rush, because we could sit and watch TV while he showered, and could be there, should anything happen. Upon hearing his hesitancy, I got up and said, let's do this. I took him in the bathroom and said, let's map out how you're going to safely get in and out of the shower. I think at any time up until that point, there would have been a pushback. But this time, he knew he needed it. There was a shift in the dynamic when he realized he wouldn't be made fun of or make fun of himself. It was a transition in realizing I was there to help. I literally just showed him how to sit down and stand up and make sure he could reach his walker and the shower handle. Nothing special. I mean, it was, but it wasn't extraordinary. I helped him through his shower process. We discovered the chair wasn't positioned in the shower in a way that would allow him to operate the shower handle and get out safely. I made him sit down and get up, knowing he'd have to do this on his own while completely wet, with a possibility of slipping. We positioned his underwear in the right spot, and he practiced reaching for it. I reminded him he didn't have to rush, that he needed to stop and breathe. We did that together. It was the first time since that conversation in high school that I realized another change. It wasn't as grand or even as articulated, but it was the first time that I was with him that I felt I was truly trusted by him. I was taking care of him unquestioned, and he received that unquestioned. No jokes, just a man and his grandson. Why do I bring this up? I don't have a reason. They're just what I wanted to share at this time and place. And to some degree, I'm saddened by the fact that this is essentially it. We could joke about the Nikki boys and the put your clothes back on, but my memories with him were limited.
Remember, revisit, replace. Can you remember his voice, his physical form? Tell me about a time you dreamt about your grandfather, but describe a feeling, not a memory. What physical form does this take? And what does this do to your body?
I want to reflect on the relationship we had together. We had what we had, and I'm okay with that. He was a gentleman in my eyes whose words were never empty. Moving forward, I wish to emulate the passions in his life that as I came into my own creative pursuits, realized were shared interests. A hard-working, educated mind with a mastery of languages, appreciation for overtures, and the power of a good card game, both in collegiality and the ability to sharpen mind and wit. As I wrote this, I wondered what can be said of a complex relationship, and I realized not much, because it's between him and me, and I'm fine with that. Our relationship wasn't always great, but at least in the end, I got something with him, and that's what matters. Recognizing that, and that he had a hand in it, and to own up to it, and fix those mistakes late in life, that to me is what I take from him and his life. I don't know of any other examples of that in my life or in his, but it's enough because I saw it, and that amongst his characteristics that I'll admire and love, that's the one I want to emulate and pay tribute to him, and see him live on through my actions, where I can recognize things about myself and correct them at any time for the sake of love and enlightenment.
What will never go away? What has permanence, if anything? What traps were left? What does it mean to mourn? What does it mean to be a grandfather? A father, mother, aunt, uncle, brother? How has his history made its way to you? Shine a light. What did you reveal? How does it feel? How do you achieve silence? Can you remember their home Was the room large? How was it lit? Try to understand this enclosed space. What objects of his do you have? Do they make you feel close or detached? Is there comfort in his death? Did you find comfort in his death? Did you ever steal anything from him? How did he relish in this? How do you imagine him at your age? Are you ambiguous, or was he? Make up a story. It doesn't have to be true. Remember, revisit. How has his history made its way to you? What else exists? Do you fade in or out? Or both? What is it you want?
Can you call it a nightmare if you're not scared by it? Because I don't think it ever alarmed me, as it sort of just woke me up. Maybe in a sweat, but not alarmed. I remember going to this Chuck E. Cheese type place, but it was fictional. High ceilings, like we were in a giant circus tent, very surreal. There was this game area, but then off of the main room, there was this side parlor where you'd eat. We find a table in the back room against the wall. It's not very busy. The 4 grandkids are given a few coins each, and then my grandmother and aunt sat and talked as we ran off. I remember ending up at my own machine. The other 3 sort of dissipate at this point. I play a few games, and it's kind of peaceful, just doing my own thing, surrounded by flashing lights and dinging machines. Then I run out of coins, so I walk back to the parlor, and it's much busier. It feels like Charlie Brown, where the kids come up to the adults' legs. But I move through the room to the table, and my aunt and grandma are nowhere to be found. So I continue to walk through the room, only to find them, and then they ask me where I was, and that we've got to go. They've been waiting for me, but they were the ones in a different location and hadn't communicated anything about anything. The thing is, my parents wouldn't have not gone with us. Where would they be? Where were they? It doesn't really add up, but it's still so vivid. My grandma died when I was 14, so I would have had to have been 9, 8, 10. The thing is, I may not have a lot of good memories with them, but they've helped me see the world the way I do.
I think it's recording now.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to hear the reflections on family love and pain. Struggle and pain. You first?
It's all the same to me.
Yeah. I think family can be a struggle and a real pain too.
And love.
Love.
It could be loving, painful.
I think all love is... all love has pain.
Mm-hmm.
There's an element of pain to all love. That's what makes it lovely.
And painful.
Yeah, exactly. Risk, vulnerability. That's
love is attachment, and therefore it's painful, right?
Yeah.
Because you're attached to it.
And family just strikes home the most, right? Because they get the most intimate.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
You grew up with them. You really don't have a choice. You kind of have to love them.
Yeah. One way or another. You have a choice, I guess. You don't have to, but...
Well, you have to. You grow up, they raise you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Grow up with them.
And then, as far as...
but eventually you lose them.
Yeah, and everything we love, we lose eventually, right? So there's always pain. The more you love something, the more pain there is.
Always pain.
Yeah. It's sort of the hell realm.
The hell realm, because we're in the hell realm.
Yeah, where everything that tastes good is bad for you. You can't live without devouring other things.
Yeah.
And you can't love without losing.
Too much of a good thing is bad, right?
I think that's enough for today.
Last week was my parents' birthday, so we went home to see them. My mom's dad, he didn't have much stuff at all, especially family things.
What happens when communication is impossible?
She said we can throw those out. I wanted to keep it, to see a part of them we never knew. Take what serves you and leave what doesn't.
What is it you want?
"5'9"? He wasn't tall. But I remember going to Grandma Zaraz's deathbed and sitting in the living room while my dad said goodbye in the other room.
Can you see the absence of the body?
Pressure on my chest, tight enough to be uncomfortable but soft, discernible between anger or sadness. We always lit yard-site candles. When we were younger, they were always just there. One of the things Dad would do, his grandparents, his mom. It was not very loud, big, or sad. They just were.
Describe what it felt like to walk up to him. Alive and not alive.
I remember going to the Semmel's house to sit Shiva. We left after like an hour or so. He was talking about suicide in the end. I don't think they can really comprehend that. This may sound weird, but after looking at those pictures, I miss the people I never knew. I hope this is not the beginning of the end.
What can you remove from yourself? What do you want to remove from yourself?
I think part of the shock with my eulogy was my recognition of death. We saw this coming, and death has always been a possibility. By the time he was born, he had finally learned how to be a grandfather.
Can you still see the space between your bodies?
My grandma and aunt, from an early age, talking about my responsibility as the oldest. They have no idea how deep, how far this goes.
What does it mean to be forced apart?
Knowing that having to pretend in front of him so as not to cause an issue was finally over. He shouldn't have to hear those things, but I should. We were in Pennsylvania for a wedding, a cousin's wedding, and got a call he had a spill. I was sitting next to my dad on the couch. Well, he may be able to carry on like this for a while, but he's not getting better. It was Thanksgiving night. We took them to say goodbye to him before they left back east. He died early the next morning.
What does it mean to move on?
Especially for Poppy, who wanted to be with my grandma again. But also for me.
What has permanence?
I live with all these memories, and I just said I wish it was better. Oh yeah, his goofy smile. My mom sounds like him.
What will never go away?